know what your kids would be doing if you had all those technical difficulties. You would have lost them from the get-go, and then it would have been trying to get them back. And that's part of classroom management, is being able to keep control of those situations when your technology doesn't work. And we're going to take a look at classroom management. I will tell you that I taught for 26 years, so I have experience in classroom management, and I always got the kids that nobody else wanted because my principal always knew they wouldn't be sitting in her office. I would be taking care of it. So most of what I'm going to share with you is things I've actually used, things that I've tried to keep current on, even though I'm no longer teaching. Let me. Okay. Let me see if I can get this set up here to pick up. It's not wanting to pick up my PowerPoint. Okay, can you guys, Kathy, can you see that screen?
I can see it.
And it is the PowerPoint?
Appears to be, yes.
Okay, there we go. All right, just a little, I already told you a little bit about me. I have a bachelor's and a master's in education. I have endorsements in learning disabilities and mildly handicapped. I've taught just about everything except high school. And I finished up in 3rd grade, and I can tell you 6th grade and 3rd grade are nothing alike. If you haven't been exposed to it, there's a book called The First 100 Days of School, and it's by Harry Wong. And he says that success for the school year is determined by the first day. Now, even though we're past the first day, it's never too late to start classroom management. Classroom management is not discipline. It's about establishing everything ahead of time so that you can be ready for the kids. One of the things that's important to do is establish classroom procedures. I had classroom procedures for sharpening my pens, for sharpening their pencils. I had classroom procedures for asking to go to the restroom, for lining up, for getting out the equipment for recess. And we practiced those the first 2 weeks of school. We just, and you know, sometimes you have to even break it down a little bit. Like we would practice just standing up and quietly pushing our chair. And the next step would be to walk over to where they were to line up. And so we would break that down so that they were learning it in small steps. When you come back from a long break, you practice. When you get a new student, you practice. And if you do those, it's always easy to have a better situation in the classroom. I'm going to just talk real quick about some of the things that are out there for discipline. For example, Harry Wong, as one of the things, he used to have tapes and videos that you could watch. He still does the book. He's always about, he says there are 4 stages of teaching, and I found this interesting when I read it. There's the fantasy when you first get out of college and you think everything's going to be wonderful and you're just ready to do that. That usually happens the first 2 weeks. Then there's the survival. Sometimes that kicks in around Christmas. With COVID, it's coming a lot faster. Then there's mastery, where you can manage your classrooms and you have high expectations, and then you can actually teach and make a difference, and you can hold the kids accountable. The last stage is impact. You've made a difference, use effective teaching strategies. Students come back to tell you that you made a difference. If you're in the impact stage, it will get you back to the fantasy of feeling like you can make a difference. And I've been gone 9 years, and I can walk into my building, and the last group I taught is now seniors. I can walk back into Lanesville and those kids will come up and hug me. So there is, when you have a difference. I have 6th graders that I taught 6th grade, or that are now adults and having their own kids, and I get invitations to their baby showers. So having a relationship with the kids, you can have classroom management and still have that relationship. When you've made classroom procedures, and I will show you some that's pre-made, and at any time that you want some, you can email me and I'll send them to you. But it's, keep it simple. These are students in training. Keep them down to 5 commands. Try to keep the commands positive. Follow directions first time given. That's walk quietly in the hallway is better than saying don't run. So post your procedures all around the room. I used to, as part of the training, I'd stand in the door at beginning of the school year. Well, I did it all at school year, and I would tell the kids, I would say, good morning, make sure you put your folder in the basket, put your backpack in the cubby, take out your backpacks, the folders out of your backpacks, sharpen your pencils. So they always heard what was going on in the classroom. Sometimes when you're practicing, like I said, break it down. Even older kids. I worked with a teacher that was a high school teacher in chemistry. And so she was losing a lot of class time because like she was having the kids turn in their papers when they were finished, and they were just getting up and kind of roaming around the room. So if you have a procedure where you can say, pass them all forward, person in the front, put them in the basket, it makes it run better. You can have classroom procedures for every grade level. Sharpening a pencil happens the same way from 1st grade to being a senior. So as long as you have those, how to exit the classroom, how to leave when the bell rings, all of those are things, and you need to be consistent. Like if my kids knew if they had a question, they were supposed to raise their hand quietly, and I would come to them or ask them to come to me. If they forgot that and they came up to me and asked a question, the first thing I would do is say, well, what's the procedure? So let's walk back to your desk and raise your hand, and then I'll answer your question. If you don't enforce it, it's not going to be successful. There are 3 characteristics of an effective teacher. You have positive expectations. You're really good as a classroom manager. You know how to move from one thing to the next without losing control of the kids. You know how to design good lessons. Good lessons are key to being classroom management. If the kids are bored, if they, and there are ways you can even do lecture to make it more stimulating. So if you expect positive things, you're going to get positive things from your kids. I want to just introduce you real quick to some of the things that are out there. Conscious discipline is one of them. I have some schools that use that. Conscious discipline is based on creating a connection with the student, and it's supposed to create a climate within the school family. Adults and children have to learn skills necessary to manage life, like forming relationships, communicating, being sensitive to others' needs, and getting along with others. Conscious discipline tends to be done a whole school. It's not just a classroom. There's 7 powers for self-control that change adults' perception with relationships, empowering them to be proactive. Often there's a misconception it has no consequences for wrong behaviors. Conscious discipline, you can go, there are books that talk about conscious discipline. There are, if you buy the book from their website, it gives you access to different things you can print and use in the classroom. It's probably going to cost you about $100 over time. So if it's not something that you are really, you should probably investigate it before you did invest the money to do that. Here are the 7 powers of self that go with conscious discipline. There's the power of perception. No one can make you angry unless you let them. So you teach adults and children to take responsibility when they get upset. There's the power of unity. We're all in this together. It's like COVID, we're all in this together. Power of attention. Whatever we focus on, we get more of, to create images of expected behavior in a child's brain. There's the power of free will. The only person you can change is you. And I use this a lot in my everyday life. I cannot change you. I can only change how I react to you. There's power of acceptance. That moment is as it is, to learn to respond to what the world has to offer instead of making the world try to go our way. And you know how that is with kids. They want what they want. There's the power of love, to choose to see the best in others. There's power of attention that gives you the mistakes or opportunities to learn. And I have to tell you, there are some people that would look at that and roll their eyes. They're going to think, sure, what? That's really going to work. I never used conscious discipline. I did research it when I started putting together the classroom management thing. I can see that it has some strengths, and I can see that it probably has some weaknesses. PBIS is a positive behavior intervention system. And again, this is probably whole school more so than just classroom. It rewards positive behavior. Again, consistency, students get the praise. They collect data. A lot of middle schools tend to use PBIS because they have like one school that I have is their mascot's the wolf pack. So they have pack bucks. So they use those. And then on Fridays, the kids get to do things. They tend to get recognition from retail stores, coupons to community businesses. Opportunities to participate in athletics and social events. If you have 5 pack bucks, you can go to the Valentine's dance kind of thing. They use it to buy school supplies, tickets to games, that kind of thing. I tend to use my own thing. There is power in peer pressure. For example, I used to sit my kids in groups. Just because of the size of my room, I had to push desks together, and I always used sticker charts. And a group could, every time when they got their books out, when I asked them to, they could get a sticker. I used it for different things. If I had one group that was really good and wasn't talking, I would, say, oh, here's a sticker. I appreciate the fact that you guys are listening. It worked extremely well. I would let them pick the reward. And they were always pretty reasonable with what they asked for. I had a deal with another teacher, so if they wanted extra recess, they could go with them, and then I would take some of hers when she did the same thing. So I want to get out of this for just a second, because I want to show you something that worked so well for me. Another teacher actually taught me this trick, and it's called the journey chart. And when our 6th graders graduated, they always went through each grade and said, I remember Mrs. Hobbs for. This is what all my kids remembered me for. And I'm gonna see if I can get this up for you. And this is an easy thing to make, and it works so well. It's called the journey chart. You can kind of see, we have like Bubblegum Boulevard, we have Fireball, Firehouse, Pixie Stick. There's another one that I have back here. And these are wonderful. So this is a classroom management thing. And I'll be happy to send you some. If you want to email me, I can send you some of the pictures that I used. This one has Root Beer Float Freeway, reading rainbow. The one thing that's kind of hard to see is that each one has more dots to the next one. So when they start with Pixie Stick Paradise, they may only have 10 stickers. But when they get to the last part, they may have to go 25 spaces. So I used this a lot, and it was a class thing. If they came in quietly from lunch and had a seat, I'm going to take this camera off because it's if they came in from lunch, I moved them a space. I have these little, I found a tennis shoe pin that I used to move around that they really loved. If they were getting their books out quietly, I used it, and it was wonderful. I've never had a class that the journey chart was not successful with. It was always part of what they loved. I'm going to show you a few more things that these are behavior bucks. You can find these online and print them. I used smiley dollars was what I made myself, and it works wonderful. I only used $1. I didn't use the 5, the 10. I just had $1. And every morning, as soon as I got to work, I would put some in my pocket, and I would walk around during the day, and I would, if they were working hard, I'd put one on their desk, and I'd say, thank you for doing what I asked you to do. They loved them. And again, I didn't always use them to like give candy or that kind of stuff. We had a little store they could buy stuff out of. Every year at Christmas, I took all the stuff that I was regifting from the year before that the kids give me, and then I auctioned it off for them to give as gifts to their parents and stuff, and they loved that. It was awesome. They would spend $100 to buy some Christmas mugs that I had collected over the years as a teacher. So it was a wonderful thing to do. They enjoyed that so much. I always had school supplies, so if they didn't have a pencil, they could buy their own pencil. If they needed a box of crayons, they could buy a box of crayons. So that worked extremely well for them to use their smiley dollars. Sometimes I would let them buy my chair for the day. I never sat in it anyways. So I would sell them the teacher's chair for the day, and they thought that was just the most awesome thing ever that they could have. There are tons of classroom management systems on Teacher Pay Teacher if you wanted to do that. One of them I used for middle school to help a middle school teacher. You print off the tickets and you cut out, and then when they're doing whatever it is you want them to do, if they're finishing a homework assignment, they brought their homework assignment, they had a good class day, they get a ticket, and they had a jar of jelly beans is what they had. And so every time you got a ticket, you wrote your name on it and how many jelly beans you thought were in the jar, and then you put it in. At the end of the month, the teacher would find the one that was closest to the amount, and that kid would get what was in the jelly beans that were in the jar. And then the next month, they might use mints or M&Ms. It was extremely effective for middle school. I'll tell you another thing that is effective for middle school that is really easy to do. I had 2 junior high math classes one time that were just something else. And I would put 5 tally marks on the board. And if they have 1 at the end of the class, then they got some kind of little treat or something. And if they lost it, it didn't come back. So if the class was acting out, they didn't sit down and get started when the bell rang, I took a tally mark. And then if we were transitioning from one thing to the other, they didn't transition very well, I took a tally mark. And that was extremely effective with the middle school. There are these punch cards on Amazon that I have used from time to time as well. They come with 10 punches. you can get 200 of them for like $8.99. So I've used those. I've used them for individual kids. I've used them for the whole class. I've used them for just different things. And you just have a hole puncher and you just go around and you punch holes in those cards. And when they finish the card, then there's something attached to it and they usually know what it is. If you have a student that is extremely difficult, I used a behavior contract. And I want to talk about that because I find these can be extremely effective. The thing is Ron Plevin is an author that puts up a few books, and a lot of that stuff would apply to middle school, high school. You can actually use it for just about anything. His saying is, every kid is motivated by something. You just have to find out what they're motivated by. So with my real severe kids, I would use a behavior contract. And I would sit down with the student and we would write up the expectations. And I would say, okay, so what do you think we need to work on? And, you know, most of the time they can tell you what they need to work on. So we would write it out. So they have to follow directions the first time given. They have to keep their hands and their feet to themselves. Raise your hand and get permission to speak. So we would go through those and we would talk about those expectations. And I would sit with the student and I'd say, so tell me, what does follow directions the first time given look like to you? So does that mean I have to come over and tap on your desk a couple of times to get you started? Does that mean that, you know, I have to stand by your desk and make you kind of get started? And so we would talk about what those look like, because sometimes I think we give all these rules to kids, but then we don't really explain what that looks like. And I'm just going to be honest with you, from where kids were when I started teaching, back when there were still dirt roads. I think I started in '87. To where kids were when I left in 2012, there was a big swing in how kids behaved in the classroom. And, you know, I used to tell people, kids are like wine. You have good years, you have bad years. So the behavior contract came out quite a bit on those bad years. I would talk, after we put together the behavior contract, the next step, we would talk about what rewards they would get. And like I said, you have to find what motivates the kid. I had one that Hot Wheels was his thing. So when he earned 20 stickers, I would buy him a Hot Wheel. At that time, they were like 75 cents a piece. So it wasn't a big deal. Some of them like computer time. So if you can give them 10 extra minutes on the computer. Some will say, I'd like to have a treat with lunch. So I could go to the lunchroom. Sometimes I would let them have lunch in the classroom with a friend. So there are things you can do that, like I said, you don't always have to spend money. You don't have to use candy as a reward. There are things you can do differently. And I was really big on hands-on stuff in the classroom. So I had a lot of games. So if they wanted to pick a game and play for 15 minutes with a friend, they could do that. Again, it's what motivates them. Now, that's the reward part. You have to have the consequences. One of the things that we did, I always gave them a warning, and I would make it very clear that this is your warning. So you need to keep that in mind. A lot of people use recess. I don't like to take a kid's recess. I might take a few minutes of it, but I wouldn't take it all. And I never take recess from a class, a whole class, because it will just cause you more heartache and grief from parents, and it's not necessary. One of the things that I used to use as a consequence is they either had to call their parent and tell them why they are at this particular consequence, or they might have to sit and write a letter that says, you know, I called Johnny a name today after Mrs. Hobbs had given me a warning about being out of my seat. So that, and I'd make them get their parents to sign it. I never, like I said, if you see the bottom, it's see the principal. I very seldom ever sent a kid to the principal. The only way I actually sent a kid to the principal is when that child was just being so disruptive to the rest of the class that we could not function. Most of the time, you can keep training. When you have a kid on a behavior contract, maybe you might have to do some tweaking along the way. But I have found that with your severe behavior kids, these are extremely effective. I use the little sticker charts to help keep up. You can use the punch cards if you want to do that, but it does make a difference. Here are, I was trying to see. I talked about having procedures. I have several of these that I have done for other people. All right, so this is one where I had a 5th grade teacher that was struggling with classroom management. So she and I sat down and did these. Here's one for the class cafeteria. So that teacher had to stay with them until they were seated and eaten. So she would say no more than 5 students in the serving line at one time. No talking while waiting to enter the serving line, no playing with your food, and show respect to all adults in the cafeteria. Now, the one thing I said to her when she was doing this is, there is some no's, and I try to do these classroom procedures where there are no no's, if we can do that. So here are some gym procedures where we tried to get away from the no. So quietly stand up and wait to be dismissed. Follow your teacher out the door in an orderly manner. If you need to use the restroom, use it on the way to the classroom. Stop at the lockers, put your coat and backpack in the locker. Now, if I were in the first 2 weeks of school, the first thing that I would do is have the kids quietly stand up and wait to be dismissed. And we would practice that several times. Then we would say, okay, now follow me out the door in an orderly manner. And if I had to take them back and forth into the classroom 3 or 4 times to work on that, I would, because I do think it's important that you do those things. We spent a lot of time talking about what going to the restroom should look like. What are the appropriate things to do? What are the not appropriate things to do? And then stopping at the locker and putting on your backpack in. We would do that. And then you sort of put it all together. I have a kindergarten teacher where I used to work at the school I used to work in, and she was wonderful. She had her kids did literacy centers, and they would move about very quickly and quietly. For kindergarten, it was amazing. And the reason she was able to do that is because the first 9 weeks of school, they didn't actually do the literacy centers. All they did was practice how to go to the literacy centers, how to move about in the literacy centers, how to clean up after themselves. And so it really is a worthwhile thing to try. What I did, like I said, I was a hands-on teacher. Every day I did some kind of hands-on math with my kids, whether it was a game or if we were doing measuring, we might make pancakes. So I needed to be able to get my kids back on task. So I had a couple of things that I used, and one was a duck whistle. I had gotten this from riding one of those ducks somewhere with my husband. And this was amazing because it was not, we always have whistles out on the playground. Kids are used to that sound. They don't always tune into your voice when they're playing games. They tune into what's going on around them. And I used the duck whistle, and it really does sound like a duck. They knew when they heard the duck that they were to stop whatever they were doing and find me in the classroom and give me their attention. It was extremely effective. You can also buy train whistles, and they love those too. It's a different way to get their attention. Like I said, we use whistles they hear whistles all the time. So you have to find something. I got these on, both of these on Amazon, and I got several of them. I think the trains come in like a package of 12. So if you can find a couple teachers that might want to go in with it on it, but it's worth it because it gets their attention. They just think that's the coolest thing ever. I did the countdown with the kids starting at 5 and moving to 1. But in order for that to be effective, you have to have the voice for it. And I do have the voice for it. I used to tell the kids, I'm not yelling at you. This is just the way it is. But to make it really successful, what you have to do is start with what you want them to do. So 5 is I want you to stop. If you're walking, talking, whatever you're doing, 5 is I want you to stop. 4 is I want you to find me and put your eyes on me. And then 3 is I want you to help everyone around you to make sure no one's talking. So if you put something with that, it's more meaningful. The kindergarten teacher that I mentioned, she would do the bubble. You have to put your bubble in your mouth and you can't let the bubble go. And that's how they moved up and down in the hallway. So you would see the kindergarten kids and their little cheeks would be all out because they were holding on to that bubble. And it was very effective for her. Would it work for 6th grade? Nope, it would not. I guarantee you. One of the things I saw a teacher do was doing the class, and they would reply, yes, yes. And she would do it very soft. And then she would do it a little louder, and whatever she did, then they had to copy her. And it was extremely effective for her. So there's a variety of things. And I would tell you, if you find something that doesn't necessarily work, try something else. And don't just think that thing is never going to work, because every class is different. I've used dinosaur tickets with the smaller kids where I gave them a ticket instead of the smiley dollars. Again, you can buy those in different kinds of stores. I found it at a teacher store, and most of those are online now, but they're extremely effective. Like I said, Mailbox Magazine is, if you are not familiar with Mailbox Magazine, they have a book, and you can go online and get it. I have a copy of it myself that I keep to use with teachers. And it's called, let me get the name for you, Motivators and More. And it's a real simple little book for elementary, and it's got things you can copy and use as far as classroom management goes. If you have younger kids on Teacher Pay Teacher, there is a program that deals with choice, green choice, red choice, and it's excellent for small kids. I've seen it used in a special ed preschool, and I was so impressed with how it worked at the special ed preschool that I went and purchased it just so I could see it, look at it. I've used it with a couple of kindergarten teachers that needed some help. It's knowing what you're looking for. Like I said, whenever, it doesn't matter what you use, it has to have something the kids buy into. So you have to be, like I said, you have to be careful, because a lot of schools now don't want you to use candy. They don't want you to use any of that kind of stuff. So you have to look for what, so what I suggest is at the beginning of the school year, or even now, have a conversation with the kids. What things would you like to see incorporated? What could we work for? I had, sometimes we would do a movie. I didn't get in the habit of using that a lot, but we would do a movie day where they could have a movie at the end of the day as part of their reward. I've asked parents to chip in. Like if we did popcorn in a movie, the parents would send in the popcorn. I'd ask them, they would send it in. So they're really good about that. There's just a lot about classroom management. And I'm going to tell you the thing that is the most important thing to know about classroom management is you have to be consistent. You know, again, like if you have a student that doesn't follow those procedures, I would just walk up to them and I'd say, okay, can you tell me what the procedure is for sharpening a pencil? You know, it's not to do it while Mrs. Hobbs is teaching. So I'm going to ask you to have a seat. And then when I'm not teaching, you can feel free to sharpen your pencil. If you need a pencil, just raise your hand and I'll give you one until to use until I'm finished teaching. And my kids were always on, you know, by this time of the year, I didn't have to do that anymore. They knew what those procedures were. They followed those procedures. I used to carry, like I said, the smiley dollars. Like if we were waiting in the lunch line and to go into the lunchroom and the kids were getting antsy, what I would do is I would ask them a review question. I'd say, you know, give me an example of a common noun for Mrs. Hobbs. And they would have to, you know, say teacher or person. And I would give them a smiley dollar. And so that kept them from kind of losing it in the hallway. And it was always a good review. My kids tended to score pretty well on the test because I did constantly review with them. So it's a constant redirecting. So I'm going to stop talking for just a minute and see if, okay, so here's a question. And I'm going to, if you guys want to ask me some questions, and I'm always happy to brainstorm with you to find a thing. So the question is, how did you handle students without a behavior contract feeling left out if they saw and complained and not received the same rewards? Well, the child and I are the only ones that pretty much know about the behavior contract. They had the stickers on their desk, and I didn't really have that problem because most of the kids understood that that was somebody that really needed it. And we had the journey chart, so they were able to do that. I used the smiley dollars. Everybody felt included one way or the other, so it really wasn't a problem. If a kid came up to me and asked me, why did they do so-and-so and I didn't, then, you know, we would have that conversation. You know, everybody is special, and this is the way we take care of this one. Like I said, I didn't really have that problem. Most of those kids tend to be up by your desk, so you can quietly kind of handle that without everyone knowing. And so it really wasn't a problem. If they list the last tally mark with 20 minutes remaining, how did you manage them for those last 20 minutes? I was you have to pick and choose the battles you want to take. And I've never really had 20 minutes of class left with one tally mark. You know, usually when they get down to 2, then they start putting peer pressure on each other. And that's a wonderful thing in junior high, is they would put peer pressure on each other. They weren't going to lose that last one if they could help it. And, you know, you develop a relationship with the kids over that amount of time, so you can kind of use, my kids used to say, she's giving you that look, you better stop. She's giving you that look. So did you see her eyebrows? And so I could use the look and I could get them to settle down. The key to most of those, I would say, is in the beginning, you're pretty generous. When I started the smiley dollars at the beginning of the year, I was pretty generous. And then they got harder to earn and harder to earn and harder to earn. Those tally marks in the beginning, I made sure they had one at the end of the class period for a while. And then I would start, you know, making sure that I was using them. They were having to work a little harder for them, and like I said in the beginning, you make sure they have success. There was back in the 80s and early 90s, there was a guy called Lee Cantor. I don't know if you've heard of him or not, but he used to do the marble jar. That was his big thing. You put a jar up there, and if they got 20 marbles, they got to do something. And he would tell you, drop those marbles in there frequently. And then the next time after they got 20, they would have to move to 25 and then to 30. So you kind of space them out. I would say the technology, technology is wonderful when it works. So one of the questions is, like today, when the technology was going down, I think anytime that you have technology in the classroom, you have to have a backup plan. So if you have technology, it goes down, you lose your class, move on to something else. If you can see when you're starting to lose your class. So make sure that you have something else to back up whatever you're doing. Like I said, the duck whistles, the train whistles, all that kind of stuff, it's all about training the kids. So, like I would let them walk around the room, and then I would blow the whistle and they would stop. And we did that several times. I have a book on classroom management that I put together. I usually hand out these things and we talk. Let me see if you guys have any more questions. I think Kathy put the my email address in here for you. I'm happy to send you copies of the stuff that I have, the classroom procedures. You can have a thing on the PowerPoint. I was trying to go through and see if we got through most of that. I will tell you, if you go online and Google classroom management, you can find a lot of stuff on there. Those behavior bucks, there's some that are called chore bucks that you can find on there. There's the first days of school implementing guide from Harry Wong. I really, he's the one that when I first started teaching and was in it for a little while, he was the first one that I actually heard talk about practices and procedures and putting those up in the board. And then we did a professional development with Carolyn Coyle, and she is just the most awesome person to do trainings for differentiated instruction. And the one thing she actually said is, if you want to succeed in differentiated instruction, you have to have those procedures. And she was awesome. And that's when I finally started doing that. Like I said, I posted them all around the room. I had them for the pencil sharpener. My kids, by Christmas, I didn't have very many classroom management issues. They were pretty much trained. They could follow the classroom procedures. I used to, with my sixth graders, I found some things where they were kind of like a punch card thing. And I made a pocket, like a library pocket, and put it up on the board. And I had yellow, I had green, yellow, red, and I think I used blue. And so I cut cards to fit in those pockets. And if you were on green at the end of the day, then you got a punch on your card. Behind the green was yellow, and that was a warning. So I could just walk back there while I was teaching. If I had somebody that was doing something that they shouldn't, I could just go back there to their library pocket and move the card behind, and they would know that that was a warning. then the next one was a consequence. 5 minutes with me at recess talking about how to be more successful in the classroom. So then I would, if they were at the yellow, they continued, then I'd go back and move the yellow behind. And it was an easy system to manage. The hardest part of that was just getting their names and getting the bulletin board set up. I found that to be extremely effective with my 6th graders. I don't know that I would have thought that would have worked as well with the 3rd graders. I really never tried it with them, but the 6th graders, it worked extremely well. And I never had to stop teaching. I could just continue what I was saying. I could just walk back to the bulletin board and slide that card back there. And they knew that was a problem. Like I said, those punch cards are like $8.99 for 200 of them. They're a good investment because you can use them for individual kids. You can use them for your whole classroom. I really liked those. And usually when I do this and it's in person, I try to give you some of these things to take with you. I have pictures for the journey chart. This actually goes back to a teacher that retired a long time ago. She had this set up when I came to join her in the 3rd grade, and it was awesome. I have all the pictures like for Recess River. We have a reading rainbow, like we spent one afternoon where we could do nothing but just read all afternoon. They loved that. They could bring their blanket and lay on their blanket. So like I said, you don't always have to use candy and rewards like that. I can send you, if you want to email me, I'll send you those things as well. I'll send you this that I have on hand. On the PowerPoint, there's some helpful resources that you can use on how to do a classroom economy. If you want to do those kinds of things, you can find stuff on PBIS, conscious discipline. You can find free printable behavior charts. If you go looking for those. So you don't have to spend a lot of money either to do classroom management. So do you guys have any other questions? You have a kid you want to talk about for a few minutes to see if we have some ideas? All right. I know it. I would really love to be able to do this in person because it's a lot more, I can give you things to take with you. But like I said, email me, I'll send you anything that you want. I hope it was helpful. Practice makes perfect. That's the best piece of advice I can give you as far as classroom management. Practice makes perfect. Do those, get those procedures up in your room and practice them, and then be consistent and you'll be surprised. I appreciate all of you spending time with me.